So I want you to imagine something. You are gripping the steering wheel of this dark SUV.
Right.
You're rolling over the George Washington Bridge. The neon glow of New York City is kind of fading out in your rearview mirror, and you have your sights set straight down the coast.
All the way down.
Yeah, all the way to Miami, Florida. But here is the catch. You are staring down the barrel of a 1,200-mile drive.
Wow.
There are no hotels booked. There's no pulling over for, a solid night of sleep.
Zero rest.
Exactly.
Right.
The plan is to just drive straight through the dark in a standard gas-powered SUV until you literally hit palm trees.
Yeah.
So the question is this the ultimate legendary American road trip? Or is it just like an absolute waking nightmare?
I mean, it's an absolute gauntlet. What we're looking at today is this deeply intense test of endurance. It's something that's often called the Iron Butt Challenge, and it's a journey that completely blurs the line between the mechanical capabilities of modern engineering and the very hard limits of human biology.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I am intentionally curious about this. Surviving a non-stop 1,200-mile drive down the eastern seaboard feels like it should be a badge of honor.
Yeah, on paper.
Right, on paper. But the more I look at the source data from this specific trip we're deep diving into today, the more it looks like a terrible mistake.
Oh, absolutely.
But they didn't just do this for bragging rights, did they? There's this very specific, almost scientific mission behind these AI prompt book notes that we're looking at.
Exactly. The entire point of putting this driver through 1,200 miles of nonstop asphalt in a gas SUV is to establish a strict, undeniable baseline.
A baseline for what?
Well, they are logging the exact financial cost, the precise minute-by-minute time, and the physical toll of doing this the old-school way, with liquid fuel.
Oh, I see.
Because next month, they're going to attempt the exact same route under the exact same conditions in a fully electric Tesla Model Y.
So they want to know if forced charging stops are going to fundamentally break the road trip. And to figure that out, you first have to know what the ultimate gas-powered extreme looks like.
You need the data.
Yeah. And right out of the gate, looking at the logistics of this trip, there's a fascinating detail that actually makes this nonstop baseline even possible.
Oh, the toll thing.
Yes. It's this tiny logistical hack that completely changes the physics of the drive.
It really does. I mean, it's a detail that seems incredibly mundane on the surface, but it alters the entire rhythm of the journey.
It's the toll pass.
Yeah.
Drivers making this New York to Miami run, they no longer need to buy a specific Florida Sun Pass.
Right.
The northern E-ZPass, like that little plastic transponder you probably already have stuck to your windshield if you live anywhere near the Northeast.
The one that always falls off.
Exactly. That thing now works seamlessly on all the Florida toll roads, straight down Interstate 95.
And what's fascinating here is how this highlights the invisible evolution of our highway infrastructure. Well, historically, crossing state lines was a physical friction point. You'd hit a toll booth, you'd have to physically decelerate, roll down your window, interact with a human being.
Oh, right. Digging for exact change.
Exactly. Or wait in line to buy a local transponder. Those were mandatory micro breaks built into the journey.
It's kind of like realizing your blood type is suddenly a universal donor or something.
That's a great way to put it.
The borders just vanish, and the arterial flow of the highway just opens up for you. You don't have to break your momentum at all. The machine just keeps eating miles.
Precisely. The modern interstate has evolved into this completely frictionless ribbon of asphalt. The environment is perfectly optimized for the machine.
Because the car doesn't care.
Right. A combustion engine doesn't care what state it's in. As long as there's oxygen and fuel, it's happy to run at 3,000 RPMs forever.
Yeah.
But by removing the infrastructural friction, those old toll booths and borders, we've also removed the natural forced pauses that used to act as a safety net for the driver.
So we optimize the road for the car, not the human.
Exactly. The infrastructure is entirely ready for you to go 1,200 miles without stopping. The SUV is ready.
Right.
But as we see when we look at the timeline of this drive, human biology is emphatically not ready.
Which brings us to the dark reality of this challenge.
Yeah.
Because an E-ZPass can get you through a toll without slowing down, but it cannot stop your nervous system from just completely crashing once the sun disappears.
You really can't.
The data from this source paints an incredibly grim picture of what happens when the clock strikes 2 a.m.
Yeah, by 2 a.m., the drive has pushed deep into Virginia and the Carolinas, And the entire atmospheric reality of the trip just shifts.
Right, like that cinematic glow of the city we talked about, it's completely
Just
gone.
vanish.
You're just surrounded by the pitch black void of the highway,
Mm.
and the exhaustion starts hitting like a physical weight.
Oh, absolutely.
And the stops you do make, like
Yeah.
those frantic 5-minute dashes just to pump gas, they become these bleak, disorienting blurs.
Yeah, it's bad gas station coffee, trying to unpretzel your cramped legs, and listening to the lonely howling of the highway wind mixed with, like, the clicking of the gas pump.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. We have this heavily romanticized cultural idea of the open road.
Oh, the classic American road trip.
Exactly. The freedom of the midnight drive, just you and the highway.
Mm.
But looking at the reality of this 2 a.m. stretch, I have to push back hard on that romance.
It's not romantic at all.
No. It doesn't sound free. It sounds oppressive.
Yeah.
I need you to break down the actual biology here. How does the sensory deprivation of a pitch-black highway at 2 in the morning accelerate exhaustion so aggressively compared to just driving the same distance during the day?
What?
Because sitting and steering is the same physical act, isn't it?
Mechanically, yeah, it's the exact same act, but biologically, it's a completely different universe.
Okay, how?
During the day, your brain is bombarded with visual stimuli. You have scenery, changing landscapes, other drivers, and, most importantly, daylight. Natural sunlight hits the retina, signaling the pineal gland in your brain to suppress melatonin production. That keeps your circadian rhythm anchored. Your body knows, hey, it's time to be awake and alert.
But at 2 a.m. in rural South Carolina.
At 2 a.m., you are effectively staring into a void. Your headlights only illuminate maybe a 50-foot cone of reality in front of you.
Wow.
Everything else in your peripheral vision is totally black. This triggers an extreme form of sensory deprivation.
Because there's nothing to look at.
Exactly. Without that broad visual stimulation and without sunlight, your brain starts flooding your system with melatonin. Your core body temperature actually drops slightly. Your reaction times naturally widen.
So your body is chemically preparing you for a REM cycle, but you're forcing it to pilot a 2-ton piece of heavy machinery at 75 miles an hour.
Yes. The human body is simply not designed to process high-speed spatial navigation in the middle of its evolutionary sleep cycle.
That's terrifying.
So standing at that gas station, pouring bitter, synthetic-tasting coffee down your throat, is just a desperate attempt to use caffeine as a chemical weapon.
A chemical weapon against yourself.
Right. You're trying to override millions of years of DNA programming.
You're fighting a war against your own biology, and your only ammunition is like a flimsy cup of dark roast.
Pretty much.
That is a brutal image.
Mm.
And what's terrifying is that this 2 a.m. physical exhaustion, the heavy eyelids, the yawning, it eventually mutates into a much more dangerous psychological state as the drive stretches past the 12-hour mark.
Because the physical ache of sleep debt is really only the first layer. The true threat in an endurance challenge like this is the cognitive toll.
The records of this drive explicitly highlight this. The biggest enemy in the gas SUV isn't the cost of the fuel, and it's not even just being tired.
No, it's the mental fatigue.
Catastrophic mental fatigue. Because remember, in this baseline test, the driver is manually steering for 18 straight hours.
18 hours.
There's no advanced autopilot. You have the ergonomic nightmare of your back aching, your right ankle cramping from holding the exact same microtension on the gas pedal for hours.
Yeah, the physical strain is real.
And then the very real, very dangerous phenomenon of highway hypnosis sets in.
Right. Highway hypnosis is one of the most fascinating and, frankly, terrifying quirks of human neurology.
I was trying to find a way to describe it, and it sounds exactly like your brain is being forced into screensaver mode, while your body is somehow still actively steering a lethal projectile down the interstate.
That's a highly accurate analogy. If we connect this to the bigger picture of how our brains process information, it comes down to something called predictive processing.
Okay, what's that?
Well, the human brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ, right?
Yeah.
And it's always looking for ways to conserve calories. When you are driving in the daylight, the environment is dynamic.
Right, things are moving.
Things change. You have to actively process new information constantly.
But at night, on a straight highway, nothing changes.
Exactly. For hours on end, the visual input is perfectly, monotonously predictable. Just dashes of white paint flashing by in the dark.
Dash, dash, dash.
Yeah. When the environment becomes that predictable, the brain essentially says, I know exactly what happens next. I don't need to spend energy consciously processing this in real time.
Wow.
So the conscious analytical part of your brain literally powers down into that screensaver mode to save energy.
Wait, if the conscious brain powers down, who is driving the car?
Your motor cortex and your basal ganglia.
Seriously?
Yeah. The deeply ingrained subconscious habit centers of your brain take over the physical act of keeping the steering wheel straight and maintaining speed.
That is wild.
You enter a trance-like state of dissociation. You can literally drive for 40 miles, snap out of it, and have absolutely zero memory of the last 30 minutes of your life.
That is deeply unsettling. You're technically awake, your eyes are open, looking at the road, but nobody is actually home.
Exactly.
If a deer jumps out or a car swerves,
Your reflexes are severely compromised because the conscious brain has to wake up from that screensaver mode to intervene, and that takes precious fractions of a second.
which you don't have at 75 miles an hour.
Exactly. This is why the lack of an advanced autopilot system in this specific gas-powered baseline is such a critical factor.
Right.
The SUV has the physical stamina to run all the way to Miami without breaking a sweat. But because it lacks the artificial intelligence to share the cognitive labor of lane keeping and speed management, it forces the human mind to bear 100% of that computational load.
And a human brain manually processing a white line flashing by 10,000 times in a row is eventually going to glitch.
It has to. In an endurance challenge spanning nearly 20 hours, the human mind is undeniably the weakest component in the entire vehicle.
We've engineered these incredible machines that can effortlessly cross half the continent on a single day's rotation of the Earth. But we haven't upgraded this squishy, easily distracted biological computer sitting in the driver's seat.
Which creates this fascinating, almost painful tension as the journey finally nears its end.
Yeah, let's talk about that arrival. Because after battling the pitch-black sensory deprivation, the leg cramps, the sciatic nerve pain shooting up your lower back,
The bad coffee.
the awful coffee, and fighting off the mental screensaver of highway hypnosis, Florida finally happens.
You make it.
And there's this surreal cinematic shift. The sun is shining brightly. You cross the state line, the skies are this brilliant blue, and the tall green palm trees are swaying in the warm breeze.
It sounds
It
beautiful.
looks like paradise. But inside the cabin of that SUV, the source notes that the occupants are, quote, completely destroyed.
It's the ultimate juxtaposition. The environment outside the windshield is a tropical vacation, but the environment inside the cabin is effectively a mobile recovery ward.
Which forces us to look at the hard data they gathered from this baseline and ask if all that suffering was actually worth it.
Let's look at the numbers.
Yeah, let's look at the final tally for this gas SUV run. Total drive time from New York to Miami. 19 hours and 45 minutes of virtually non-stop driving.
Incredible.
Total distance covered, 1,150 miles. And the total financial cost for gas, an incredibly impressive $185.
From a purely economic and mechanical standpoint, moving thousands of pounds of steel and human cargo across half the continent for under $200 is a remarkable testament to the efficiency of modern internal combustion.
Okay, $185 is undeniably cheap, and they probably point out that they saved another $150 or so by not stopping to book a hotel room in Georgia or the Carolinas midway through.
Right?
But hold on, I have to push back on this being a victory,
Okay. Wow.
because looking at the aftermath, the driver was so physically and neurologically taxed by that marathon that they required a literal 2-day nap just to recover their baseline cognitive function. So what does this all mean? If you save $150 on a Hampton Inn, but you arrive in Florida so physically shattered that you spend the first 2 entire days of your vacation unconscious in bed with the curtains drawn, did you actually save anything at all?
This raises an important question about how we calculate the true cost of mobility. We are so deeply conditioned by our culture to look at the financial baseline, like the physical $185 receipt from the gas pump, and declare a triumphant victory over the system.
Right, you feel like you hacked the matrix, you beat the airlines, you beat the hotels.
But you are completely ignoring the massive biological deficit you incurred to achieve that financial win.
Yeah.
Time, energy, and physical well-being are currencies that are just as real, if not more valuable, than dollars.
Absolutely.
If you spend 48 hours of your hard-earned vacation in a state of autonomic exhaustion, completely unable to enjoy the sunny skies and palm trees you just drove 1,200 miles to reach, the actual holistic cost of that nonstop drive is exceptionally high.
I completely agree. You didn't save money. You just paid for the trip with your vacation time instead of your wallet.
Well said.
You traded your physical health for a slightly lower credit card bill. When you factor in the value of 2 lost days in Miami, that $185 drive suddenly becomes incredibly expensive.
It's a profound synthesis of the conflict at the very heart of the Iron Butt Challenge. The machine performed flawlessly.
Perfectly.
It achieved the triumphant 19-hour baseline without a single complaint. But the human operator was pushed far past the point of diminishing returns. The human broke.
It really makes you reconsider our entire obsession with efficiency. Sometimes the most efficient route on paper is the most destructive route in reality.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the ultimate cliffhanger established by this road trip data, this whole grueling 19-hour physically destroying gas SUV drive.
It was just the warm-up.
It was just the control group.
Right. The real test is what happens next. The impending electric vehicle attempt.
Exactly. Now that this punishing gas baseline is firmly set in stone, they are going to attempt to drive this exact same 1,200-mile route straight through in a Tesla Model Y.
The exact same route.
And it sets up this massive looming question for anyone who travels. We now know definitively that the traditional gas car allows you to push yourself to the absolute brink of human endurance because you only ever have to stop for 5 minutes at a time to pump liquid fuel.
Right.
The machine enables your worst habits.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens to the human body in an EV?
It completely flips the power dynamic between the machine and the driver.
Right. Think about the variables. Will Tesla's advanced autopilot step in and offload that massive cognitive burden, saving the driver's sanity and combating that terrifying highway hypnosis we talked about?
Maybe.
Or, on the flip side, will the forced charging stops, having to sit at a supercharger for 30 or 40 minutes every few hundred miles?
Yeah.
Will that stretch that 19-hour baseline into an agonizing multi-day ordeal?
It's a brilliant real-world experiment. It forces us to ask if the perceived limitations of a new technology might actually be hiding a profound biological benefit.
I love that perspective. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over before we tackle the EV half of this experiment in our next deep dive. Think back to that visceral image of the driver gripping the wheel at 2 a.m., fighting their own biology, destroying their nervous system just because the gas tank allows them to keep going without rest.
Right.
If an electric vehicle inherently forces a driver to stop, to plug in, to sit still for 30 minutes, to maybe close their eyes, use the restroom, or just walk around and get the blood flowing,
It changes everything.
it effectively kills the traditional macho, nonstop iron butt challenge. But might the technological limitations of an electric battery actually be the exact safeguard our fragile human biology needs to travel safely?
It's a great question.
Maybe the machine simply shouldn't let us drive 1,200 miles into a waking nightmare.
It suggests a fascinating paradigm shift, really, that sometimes the absolute best feature a machine can offer us is one that physically forces the human to slow down and just be human.
A forced breath in a 19-hour sprint. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems and the infrastructure you use every day. Keep a close eye on your own biological dashboard, and we'll catch you on the next one.